whispering community. It's Quiet Moments 81 here. I just thought I would read you guys out of a favorite book of mine called James Herriot's Favorite Dog Stories. If you don't know who James Herriot is, he was a vet in, I believe, Yorkshire or somewhere like that. And it's just a collection of his stories, doing house calls and stuff like that. And I like it. It has to do with animals, and it's really cute. So I will read the first story that's in here, and it is called Tricki Goes Cracker Dog. Autumn had slipped into winter. The high tops were streaked with the first snows and discomforts of practice, and the dales began to make themselves felt. Driving for hours with frozen feet, climbing to the high barns, and biting winds which seared and flattened the wiry hill grass. The interminable stripping off in drafty buildings, and the washings of hands and chests in buckets of cold water, using scrubbing soap and often a piece of sacking for a towel. This is when some small animal work came as a blessed relief. To step out of the rough routine for a while, to walk into a warm drawing room instead of a cow house, and tackle something less formidable than a horse or a bull. And among all those comfortable drawing rooms, there's none so becooling as Mrs. Pumphrey's. Sorry for the moving around. Mrs. Pumphrey was an elderly widow. Her late husband, a beer baron, whose breweries and pubs were scattered widely over the broad bosom of Yorkshire, had left her a vast fortune and a beautiful house on the outskirts of Towerby. Here she lived with a large staff of servants, a gardener, a chauffeur, and Tricki. Tricki was a Pekingese and the apple of his mistress's eye. Standing now in the magnificent doorway, I furtively rubbed the toes of my shoes on the backs of my trousers and blew my cold hands. I could almost see the deep armchair drawn close to the leaping flames, the tray of cocktail biscuits, the bottle of excellent sherry. Because of the sherry, I was always careful to time my visits for half an hour before lunch. A maid answered my ring, beaming on me as an honored guest, and led me to the room, crammed with expensive furniture, and littered with glossy magazines and the latest novels. Mrs. Pumphrey, in the high-backed chair by the fire, put down her book with a cry of delight. Tricki, here's your Uncle Herriot. I had been made an uncle very early, and, sensing the advantages of the relationship, had made no objection. Sorry for all the moving. Tricki, as always, bound her from his cushion, leaped onto the back of the sofa, and put his paws on my shoulders. He then licked my face thoroughly before retiring, exhausted. He was soon exhausted because he was given roughly twice the amount of food needed for a dog of his size, and it was the wrong kind of food. "Oh, Mr. Herriot," Mrs. Pumphrey said, looking at her pet anxiously, "I'm so glad you've come. Tricki has gone flop-bot again." This ailment, not to be found in any textbook, was her way of describing the symptoms of Tricki's impacted anal glands. When the glands filled up, he showed discomfort by sitting down suddenly in mid-walk, and his agitation. "Mr. Herriot, please come. He's going flop-pot again." I hoisted the little dog onto a table and very quickly sorted out his problem. It baffled me that the beak was always so pleased to see me. Any dog who could still like a man who grabbed him and squeezed his bottom arm every time they met had an incredibly forgiving nature. But Tricki never showed any resentment. In fact, he was an outstanding, equable little animal, bursting with intelligence, and I was genuinely attached to him. It was a pleasure to be his personal physician. The squeezing over, I lifted my patient from the table, noticing the increased weight, the padding of extra flesh over the ribs. "You know, Mrs. Pumphrey, you're overfeeding him again. Didn't I tell you to cut out all those pieces of cake and give him more protein?" "Oh yes, Mr. Herriot," Mrs. Pumphrey wailed, "but what can I do? He's so tired of chicken." I shrugged. It was hopeless. I allowed the maid to lead me to the palatial bathroom so I could wash my hands. It was a huge room with a fully stocked dressing table, massive green jars, and rows of glass shelves laden with toilet preparations. My private guest towel was laid out next to the slab of expensive soap. Then I returned to the drawing room. My sherry glass was filled, and I settled down by the fire to listen to Mrs. Pumphrey. It couldn't be called a conversation because she did all the talking, but I always found it rewarding. Mrs. Pumphrey was likable, gave widely to charities, and would help anybody in trouble. She was intelligent and amusing and had a lot of waffling charm, but most people have a blind spot, and hers was Tricki. The tales she told about her darling ranged far into the realms of fantasy, and I waited eagerly for her next installment. "Oh, Mr. Herriot, I have the most exciting news. Tricki has a pen pal. Yes, he wrote a letter to the editor of Doggy World, enclosing a donation, and told him that even though he was descended from a long line of Chinese emperors, he decided to come down and mingle freely with the common dogs. He asked the editor to seek out a pen pal for him among the dogs he knew so that they could correspond to their mutual benefit. And for this purpose, Tricki said he would adopt the name of Mr. Utterbutkin. And do you know, he received the most beautiful letter from the editor. I could imagine this sensible man leaping upon this potential gold mine, who said he would like to introduce Bonzo, fathering him, a lonely Dalmatian who would be delighted to exchange letters with a new friend in Yorkshire. I sipped the sherry. Tricki snored on my lap. Mrs. Pumphrey went on. "But I'm so disappointed about the new summer house. You know, I got it specifically for Tricki so we could sit out together on warm afternoons. It's such a nice little rustic shelter, but he's taken a passionate dislike to it. Simply loathes it. Absolutely refuses to go inside. You should see the dreadful expression on his face when he looks at it. And do you know what he called it yesterday? Oh, I can hardly dare to tell you." She looked around the room before leaning over and whispering, "He called it a bloody hut." I don't know if you guys can see this, but this sorry. Okay, one second. Okay. This way. Okay, one second. moving again. Comfortable. The maid struck. The maid struck fresh life into the fire and refilled my glass. The wind hurled a handful of sleet against the window. This, I thought, was the life. I listened for more. And did I tell you, Mr. Herriot, Tricki had another good one yesterday? You know, I'm sure he must study the racing columns. He's such a tremendous judge of form. Well, he told me to back Canny Lad and the 3 o'clock at Red Car yesterday, and as usual, it won. He put on a shilling each way and got back 9 shillings. These bets were always placed in the name of Tricki, and I thought with the compassion of the reactions of the local bookies. The dour, by turf accountants were a harassed and fugitive body of men. A board would appear at the end of some alley urging the population to invest with Joe Downs and enjoy perfect security. Joe would live for a few months on a knife edge while he pitted his wits against the knowledgeable citizens. But the end was always the same. A few favorites would win in a row, and Joe would be gone in the night, taking his board with him. Once I had asked a local inhabitant about the sudden departure of one of these luckless nomads. He replied unemotionally, "Oh, we broke him. He won't be back in a hurry," losing a regular flow of shillings. True talk must have been a heavy cross for these unfortunate men to bear. I had such a frightening experience last week, Mrs. Pumphrey continued. I was sure I would have to call you out. Poor little Tricki, he went completely crack-a-dog. I mentally lined this up with Flopbot among the new canine diseases and asked for more information. It was awful. I was terrified. The gardener was sewing rings for Tricki. You know he does this for half an hour every day. I have witnessed the spectacle several times. A large skin, a dour, bent old Yorkshire man who looked as though he hated all dogs, and Tricki in particular had to go out on the lawn every day and throw little rubber rings over and over again. Tricki pounded after them and brought them back, barking madly until the process was repeated. The bitter lines on the old man's face deepened as the game progressed. His lips moved continually, but it was impossible to hear what he was saying. Mrs. Pumphrey went on. Well, he was playing his game, and he does adore it so, when suddenly, without warning, he went crack-a-dog. He forgot about his rings and began to run around in circles, barking and yelping in such a strange way. Then he fell over on his side and lay like a little dead thing. Do you know, Mr. Herriot, I really thought he was dead. He lay so perfectly still, and what hurt me most was that Hodgkin began to laugh. He has been with me for 24 years, and I have never ever seen him smile, and yet, when he looked down at that still form, he broke into a queer, high-pitched cackle. It was horrid. I was just going to rush to the telephone when Tricki got up and walked away. He seemed perfectly normal. Hysteria, I thought, brought on by wrong feeding and overexcitement. I put down my glass and fixed Mrs. Pumphrey with a severe glare. Now look, this is just what I was talking about. If you persist in feeding all that fancy rubbish to Tricki, you're going to ruin his health. You really must get him onto a sensible talk.